But you even mentioning Chicago, we haven't done anything on them. We have to give them love here just because of how much fun it is. Even in that Memphis loss the other night, that's one of the best regular season games I've watched all season long. You turn on other arenas and then you'll put it on for a Bulls game and you're like, this is the best. And, I was wrong about DeRozan, although there's very, very rarely does somebody have their career year post 32 years old. I think he's one of 5 players to do it in NBA history. I think he's like the 5th oldest to have his best year be at this stage of his career out of thousands and thousands of NBA players. And the Vooch thing scares me a little, depending on how they'd match up, how they'd match up with the size of Milwaukee and Brooklyn. But I just kind of love watching that team and the way they're embraced again. And a lesson in front offices is like, all right, maybe every move here isn't a championship contending move, but just being interesting and being more fun and having DeRozan go on this MVP type tear. I just kind of love that city and that team, even though I'm probably not going to pick them to win the East.
It's so much fun when a team that has, and it'll be fun for when Philly's in there too. These teams that have been around forever, that have fans with the grandfather's tickets that the grandson now has, shit like that. The DeRozan thing, yeah, I'm with you. And so the San Antonio fan, they were, he was doing this in San Antonio. I was like, no, he wasn't. He wasn't doing this. He wasn't like, there was a telling moment in the All-Star game. I love to overanalyze All-Star game moments.
You do. You love it. You might be right.
Curry was trying to hit the game-winning 3, and they were like double teaming him, and he missed a couple. And then LeBron reset it, and he's like, "We need a hoop." DeRozan, and DeRozan did that fucking turnaround move that has now become like his version of Dirk's little, one-legged thing at the top.
It's one of the hardest things to defend in the league.
It's so. I compared him on Twitter to the Bernard King Knicks run. When Bernard and people are like, who the fuck? That was 40 years ago. What are you talking about? But first of all, we have YouTube. I would encourage people to, if you really love basketball, go back, learn about some of the people from the 70s, 80s, 90s. But Bernard had this move. He had 2 moves that he just dined on. One was that thing when he would have the ball like on the left side going toward the hoop, and he would go toward the baseline, and then he would shoot that little fall away from the left off the baseline, and nobody could stop it ever. And they knew it was coming, and he would still get it off whenever he wanted. And then he had like a sneaky little turnaround where most people, when they turn around the way DeRozan turns around, where you have the ball and you turn around so you're falling way to your left. Bernard would do a turnaround where he would turn around, but he would go to the right. So he was releasing it from the side, he's right-handed. And he just dined on those 2 moves. And he had the Joe House pull up too, and all those, and he was 35 points a game. DeRozan has his version of that Bernard going toward the baseline, kind of that little off balance where you just can't block it. But that fucking turnaround he has that he makes all the time now, that I know he had in Toronto, I know he had in San Antonio, but now it's like, it's just unstoppable, where he goes toward the basket, toward the guy like he's driving, and then spins and turns it into a turnaround, and he's at that Dirk angle that you can't block it. It's a top 3 unstoppable shot right now, right? What else would you have? He makes it all the time.
I was reading, it's totally locked in. Like, it's calibrated perfectly. He's up in the air as a turnaround, and you just are like, it's going in. That's how I feel about him every
Dirk,
single time.
Right? It's like when Dirk mastered that shot. It's like, that's going in.
Yeah, and this is still without Caruso, which certainly hurt them because it ended up being Io that had to defend Ja. But I'll give Io this. I fucking love that guy too. I love when Caruso's out there. They haven't had Lonzo for this whole stretch after the knee surgery. And Levine, who I wondered how is he going to adapt to another ball dominant guy in DeRozan. And it's that really tough thing to figure out. Like, how many guys do I want on my team that can get their own? And then how many guys do I have that only want to get their own? And you never quite know. Like, you have to hope that your players are maybe over it enough in their own careers. It is that 08 Celtics thing, 07, 08, where they came in, they'd all been over it. They'd all have their own individual stuff and the stats and all that stuff. And they were at a place in their career where they were okay and willing to collaborate. And I do think that's what you have with Chicago, with Lonzo being on multiple teams, Caruso knowing his role, Levine being like, I can score 30 every night, but it doesn't really mean much. And even Vooch, who'd made all-star teams and put up big numbers with Orlando. Although I got to tell you, and as much as I love the Bulls broadcast, it's one of my favorite, they're very high on Tristan Thompson. Very high. some Rodman comparisons by Stacey King, and
it's tough.
I was almost like, hey,
nobody tell them. Let them enjoy it for a couple weeks. They'll find out. Looks great. It looks great for a week.
But you know what else is interesting about the DeRozan thing too is that, like, I've always actually liked him. I liked him before the draft, and then he had, let's face it, like some disastrous series with Toronto in the playoffs. And I don't want to hear about what his overall averages are, because when you're the number one offensive, the number one offensive option on a basketball team, you're still going to put up points. But
you're in a gunfight with LeBron. You need somebody who can match baskets with him, and over again, he couldn't match baskets with LeBron, and that was what happened. And
so he goes to San Antonio, and he actually gets, like, his playmaking improves. He's still hitting those long twos that everybody hates. But there would be, I don't know how often it's said, I don't want to get this wrong, but I remember one year I was talking with Zach Lowe about it. We were going over our All-NBA votes, but again, like, he was like, what would you hypothetically be doing? And I brought up DeRozan, and he, like, sent me this thing. He goes, check out some of these plus minus on off things with DeRozan.
Right. The team was better without him.
Yeah. So you're like, cool. You know, you get 24 a game here. But this has been incredible. And I was wrong about the contract, and, you know, good for them. Cause I enjoy it. The Bulls now for me are like, oh, the Bulls are on. Okay. I'm just watching the second half, and I don't want to be distracted by anything else. And again, credit to Memphis for getting it done at their place too, because they didn't really know what to do with Ja, and they were kind of screwed by not having a better defensive option. But I really like that Bulls team, just probably not enough to pick them to come out of the East.
You look at DeRozan's stats. So in his peak, he could get to the line, right? He was in 16, 8.4, 17, 8.7, which is a huge number. And usually that goes down when you get older. And he's at 8 this year. So he's still getting to the line. So he takes even less threes than he did 4 years ago. But the 2-point percentages, he was always like in the mid 40s. It trickled up a little the last Toronto years to like the high 40s for 2-point field goal percentages. And he was 54% and 52% in San Antonio. He's 53% in Chicago. He's taking 18 twos a game. He's making 53% of them.
That's crazy.
That's fucking sick. We were talking about this in the finals last year when we were saying how one of the things we liked about this Milwaukee team was it wasn't just the threes. Like, they could get hard 2-point baskets. And that Phoenix-Milwaukee series,
same with Phoenix,
kind of became a referendum on that, right? It was like, oh, they're just getting good 17-footers, 12-footers, 18-footers, 22-footers. And we were talking about, is this like the new way to zag? Chicago, I don't know. I really like where the league is this year from a basketball watching standpoint, because I think there's so many different styles this year. We remember 2 years ago, we were kind of having a freak out about, is the league just going to be guys running the corner and jacking up threes, and that's basketball from now on. But I feel like we're in a good spot. DeRozan's like the fulcrum of it.
Yeah, there was that one Portland Golden State game when D'Angelo Russell was still on Golden State.
Oh,
and
God.
I remember, and I think somebody from the team reached out later to be like, I was there. And it was the worst. I remember it was one of those moments where, like, it even happened last night where I'm like, how long is this last minute of Milwaukee and Brooklyn? I'm like, wait, how long has this been? Because I was like, when's this game going to be fucking over? And there have been a few games where I would go, oh, you guys are just taking threes all night. I'm going to sit here for 2.5 hours. Like, I don't even need to write anything down. Be like, all right, high ball screen 3, high ball screen 3, high ball screen 3 miss. And so, yeah, I think Chicago, and whether it's whatever we'll see from Brooklyn. And
well, that's like a Chris Vernon thing where he made this point once, and I thought he crystallized exactly how I feel. The first like 2/3 of the season, there's certain teams like you kind of don't really have to study and watch, right? They are who they are. You know,
yeah.
You're like, oh, I don't really need to watch Portland. I know what they do. I don't. But whereas like there's a team like Cleveland where like, I need to watch like 10 games of this because I don't understand what's going on here. Now football's over. Now we're just completely diving in and really trying to figure it out. But I think Chicago is a good example of, I just like watching them. They can, especially watching them try to figure out the Vooch part is like the wild card thing. I know they don't have their guys back, but how do you get Vooch to where he was in Orlando? Is that even possible? You know, or is he going to be like a 15 and 10 guy for them? And that's it. Cause this was a guy who would have nights where he would just absolutely eviscerate the Celtics. We haven't really seen that guy in Chicago, and maybe they don't need that guy.